Thank you. And we do have a question or comment. Commissioner Ransall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have several questions about the forgivable loan agreement itself, which I have a copy here. Also, I believe, once again, we have interested citizens that would like to comment on both this item and the following item, which I would be interested in hearing. I have a question on this, for several of them. Forgivable loan agreement. The first, whereas it talks about the county has found that there is an economic emergency or unique opportunity which exists and warrants the spending of basically giving away $220,000 of taxpayer money. Can you tell me what economic emergency or unique opportunity exists that would justify that?
Well, we're looking at more of a retention piece as well too, Commissioner Renzel, with regards to the other communities that are trying to court companies from out of our area. That would definitely have a negative effect if they were to leave our area. That would create a somewhat of an emergency from a tax base, and this is an effort that was not just towards Sedgwick County, but also combined with the state as well as with the city.
Well, I understand that, but this says an economic emergency exists or a unique opportunity. Businesses, isn't it true? Businesses come and go all the time. They contract and expand all the time. I fail to see where there's an economic emergency and unique opportunity here. In fact, I'll give you some statistics. Every year in Kansas, close to 150,000 jobs are created and close to 150,000 jobs are lost without any government intervention at all. That is the natural course of the free market here in Kansas. Over a 5-year period, the Kansas Legislative Post Audit and the U.S. Census Bureau showed that at least 35,000 new businesses were born and 33,000 businesses were lost. This happens all the time, and we here in the government our policy should address these large numbers here, is what I'm trying to say. Instead of picking onesies and twosies and this business over that business, I think one of the previous citizens spoke very eloquently, and that an overall good tax base is what best encourages the free market and businesses to happen without government interference. And it doesn't require us redistributing wealth for our citizens. So I find it dubious that an actual economic emergency or unique opportunity exists, because this sort of thing happens all the time, and I think our economic development policy is short-sighted, and I'll speak more about that later in general, but I have some other questions here. In number 2, paragraph 2 of this agreement, it says basically that Apex can get out of this agreement if they have an unforeseen change in economic or market conditions, and ask for us to, they can appeal this. Do we have the same opportunity as a county to remove ourselves from this agreement if we have, if there are dramatic or unforeseen changes in economic or market conditions will make it difficult for us to continue this?
Could you restate the question? Yeah.
The business has a way out of this agreement and not have to pay this back. Do we have a way out of this agreement?
Mr. Counselor, can you help?
Richard Houston, County Councilor. We have an out of this agreement if we have financial circumstances that do not allow us to continue to fund it. So, in other words, it has to comply with cash basis law, and if the money isn't there, then we're out of the agreement.
I see. Well, I'll make the argument that the money isn't there.
Let me do this.
But we're having to cut our budget by $9 million. We're already spoke today about the reducing services and possibly laying off people, but yet we continue to give this money away. On item number 3, no collateral is required. Can someone tell me why we didn't require any collateral?
Commissioner Irene Hart, Community Development. This is a standard agreement that's the same agreement that's used, that the City of Wichita uses. We have a standard boilerplate agreement that's been drafted by the legal departments, the city and the county legal department. You'll see the same general agreement with project-specific changes on any of the projects that we bring to you. We bring these projects to you in accordance with the county policy that's been adopted jointly with the City of Wichita. It's been approved by the commission, the policy. We're bringing these to you as a result of that policy.
So it's normal for us to not expect collateral. I think
Yes.
this is an example, I think, that illustrates, once again, one of the other speakers has stated the private market often does a better job negotiating contracts than the government does, because I know not too many people in the private market would just give away $220,000 without some sort of collateral.
Sir, we consider this to be an investment. We do go on site, we do review the property, the operations of the organization. We do annual on-site inspections to ensure compliance with the provisions of the agreement.
I understand that. Do you have financial statements for these companies?
We've reviewed.
We've reviewed the financial statements.
You have. Have you made them available to the commissioners?
They are privileged information, sir. They are private information that are vital to the operations of the business themselves. They're not public information, so they're not available. They have been reviewed, though, to determine veracity of
Who have they been
their...
reviewed by?
They've been reviewed in one case by a CPA, and another case by our colleagues at GWEDC.
Who's the CPA work? Is it a county employee or?
Yes. The CPA is Assistant Deputy Finance Director Troy Broom.
Okay. Now, there's another, on the resolution itself, I'll point out for my fellow commissioners that it says the Board of County Commissioners finds that such an expenditure of funds is for the public purpose. I do not agree with that statement. This is exactly the same sort of philosophy and thought process behind the Kelo decision, which the Supreme Court said we can take people's personal property and give it to private developers. I don't agree with that decision. I think it's one of the worst decisions ever issued by the Supreme Court. But this uses this very same philosophy. We're saying that not only can we take people's property, but we can take their hard-earned money and redistribute it to another, to a business, a private business, so that they can prosper. Now, and then that's another thing. This is a particular business is prospering and wanting to expand, and I don't begrudge that, and I'm glad that they're doing well. But there are a lot of taxpayers out there who are not doing so well, and they're suffering. And so I'm being asked today to take money from our hardworking men and women in the community and give it to a business that is prospering. While at the same time we're going to reduce services and begin to lay off people. I can't do that. Particularly when I do some calculations here. With this particular company, the loan is $220,000. And if each employee would take a reduction of pay of 7 cents per hour over the course of 5 years, they'd get back to $220,000. And my question is, why are the taxpayers of this community being held, having to bear the burden when the average salary there is $46,000? I find it hard to believe that someone would give up or be willing to lose their job for 7 cents an hour. Now, of course, I don't believe this question was ever asked, but this is the sort of thing I think should be asked. There are alternatives to this. We've created a whole industry around this incentive program, and I'll talk more about that later. And I think in the long run it's counterproductive, and it picks winners and losers. And, it does allow politicians to pound their chest and say, see, I care about jobs because I gave your money to this person over here. But that's very short-sighted. And like I say, fundamentally, it amounts to redistribution of wealth for our citizens. I do not support that. I think the people that are able to get these jobs and keep their jobs should be willing to take a 7 cent per hour pay cut. To me, it's a very small price to pay to do that. And I don't know if, I don't understand the thought process that thinks in this environment a person's company is entitled to someone else's money when there are a lot of good people. And I went through this business as well as Mojack, and there are good people there. They're doing a good job, and I like the business that they're doing. They're involved in the community. But there are a lot of business people out there who are involved in the community doing a good job, hiring people and trying to make it by. And they don't get anything. And there's a better process out there. Everyone on this commission has a copy of a better way to do it. I think our policies need to stop applying to onesies and twosies. They need to apply to everybody. And so for these reasons I've stated, I will oppose this.
Thank you. I've been advised by Commissioner Ranzau that others wanted to speak. So before we get a motion on the table, is there someone who wants to speak and give us new information? Or I discern also that agenda item O and P are similar, and rather than us all repeat ourselves several times, if you would like to speak now and consider your comments for O and P, and if you'd like to make a comment that is substantially different from what Commissioner Ranzau said, well then I would allow you 3 minutes. I'm not trying to gag anyone. It just seems like we have heard the information. So, Mr. Todd, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of County Commissioners. John Todd, 1559 Payne, Wichita, Kansas. As a citizen of Sedgwick County, I'm highly concerned that you would even consider taking money out of the public treasury and giving it to 2 private companies on forgivable loans. Mr. Charles Koch had some interesting thoughts on government incentives in a recent opinion article that was published in the March 1st issue of the Wall Street Journal, and I quote, "Crony capitalism is much easier than competing in an open market," Mr. Koch said. "But it erodes our overall standard of living and stifles entrepreneurs by rewarding the politically favored rather than those who provide what consumers want. The purpose of business is to efficiently convert resources into products and services that makes people's lives better. Businesses that fail to do so should be allowed to go bankrupt rather than be bailed out." End of the quote. Dr. Arthur Hall, Executive Director of Center for Applied Economics, University of Kansas, compiled a report in February 2010, and he said in essence, quote, if government gives incentives to one business, then government needs to give incentives equal to all businesses. End of the quote. I believe this equality of opportunity is fundamental to our system of government, and that this equality of opportunity provides the certainty entrepreneurs need to excel and prosper, since it takes their worry away that government is going to give their competitors an unfair competitive advantage in the market. Economic certainty leads people to invest and risk their own capital, and this economic activity results in job creation. There are literally thousands of business enterprises across Sedgwick County who invest and risk their own capital in businesses daily without the government parachute or the backing of the public treasury that is being considered for this private group today. Please don't give these 2 private companies access to the Sedgwick County Treasury. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Bob Weeks, 2451 Regency Lakes Court. And I will try to respect your wishes about not repeating what Commissioner Ranzau said, but what I recognize some of the things he said came from a report published last year by Professor Art Hall of the University of Kansas School of Business, Center for Applied Economics, I believe it's called, speaking about a dynamic economy is what we need to have in Kansas, that the state, the cities, and the counties need to stop being active investors in businesses, and that's what we're being asked to do today in both of these instances, become an active investor, that we really don't know how to be active investors in businesses. Government just doesn't have the right incentives and knowledge to be able to do that. And this idea of dynamism has been embraced by Governor Sam Brownback. Large ideas of Art Hall's have made it into the governor's economic development plan, which was released not too long ago. And these types of targeted economics incentives are expressly I don't know if frowned upon is the right word, but we're urged to take a look at against them and do something different. So this action does go against that. And we should also remember for that, at least for the first company, this is not the only money that they're receiving. They're receiving a forgivable loan, I think of the same terms and same amount from the city of Wichita and from the state of Kansas, over $1.2 million of tax credits and other sorts of subsidy. So I'm worried that we're being an active investors in businesses when we really don't have the knowledge that's needed to be able to do that. Frederick Hayek told us that this knowledge of how to invest is dispersed throughout the economy, and I'm quoting him, cannot possibly be gathered together and conveyed to an authority charged with the task of deliberately creating order. But yet that's what this body is being asked to do today. But finally, a reason as to why we should avoid investing in these 2 companies in particular. together. You know, private investors will turn to the risky business of lobbying the government to support a project only when it is not clear to them that it is profitable without taxpayer subsidies. Therefore, the government is likely to specialize in money-losing projects. It's either that or we have to recognize that these companies are opportunists. They see an opportunity for free money. So we end up investing in these money-losing projects that are not able to stand on their own and be able to fund themselves through the normal process of capital markets. And as Commissioner Ranzau told us, companies are created and die every year. It's the natural process. But here we are being asked to intervene. Let's let other states invest in money-losing companies. Let's invest our money in creating a dynamic business environment in Wichita, Sedgwick County, and Kansas. Let's don't do this, please, today. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Peter John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for you, Mr. Weeks. Recently, a major company, Caterpillar, talked about how bad the business climate was, and in the state that they're headquartered in Illinois. And they were talking about perhaps moving or relocating. Should they consider Kansas? And if so, what should we do to try and bring them here? Because the real nub of this issue that I've struggled with on this issue is, unilateral disarmament in the economic development world in terms of where we go forward with this. And since Caterpillar has publicly stated that they're looking, and frankly, I think Indiana's got a leg up on us on this one than we do. The question is kind of two-part. What should we do to attract them, and what should we do to keep them?
Well, first of all, we've done a lot to attract businesses. I think that it's generally agreed that some of the top factors that businesses look to decide whether to move or whether to stay is, first of all, some infrastructure issues like transportation. And we were told last year that Reader's Digest ranked Kansas roads first in the country. So I think we've invested in roads and highways, and we have good roads and highways. Another thing they look for is a trained workforce. Well, people tell us Kansas schools rank very well in compared with other states, and of course this commission has started the National Center for Aviation Training. I know that might not help Caterpillar workers necessarily, but we've done a lot for education and things like that. The other thing I think we can do is to have a low and competitive tax policy where if a company like Caterpillar were to decide to come to Wichita, Sedgwick County, that they wouldn't have to be worried that in some future years they're going to be asked to pay extra taxes, their employees to pay extra taxes to bring the next company on in down the road. So I think we've done a lot, and these types of things, I think we simply don't know how to target these investments to specific companies or industries. I think we'd be better off in a lower tax environment overall, and that's how we could make our state more attractive.
Well, let me follow up, because I agree with a lot of the sentiments that you just expressed, and we need to have a positive business climate. We need to reduce costs. And I am very much interested and very supportive of the direction Governor Brownback's taking the state on this. But since they're also involved in providing an incentive here, do you see this as something? Should this be a state function, a city function, a county function? And if you say it should be none of the above, that you try and create an environment overall. If you say everyone's responsible, no one becomes responsible, and we're in tough economic times at this point, and we need to try and figure out a way to get out of the difficulties that we're in. So I'm trying to understand exactly what you'd recommend, that if you were in a policy-making decision, how we should proceed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't mean to beg the question off, but our tax policy, we have a lot of bodies that tax. Our property taxes are primarily gathered through local governments, the city and the county and the school district, some from the state, but our income taxes are primarily, only gathered by the state. So I think that all of them have to work together. But the investments that we've made that I talked about that are attractive, the roads and the schools, that's all, the cities and counties have roads that they build, and of course the state has roads they build, and schools are funded both by the local government, the school districts, plus the state as well. So really all cooperating together, I think, have worked to make the environment good. But certainly this body today has an opportunity to say, let's stop this targeted economic development spending and try to keep our taxes here in Sedgwick County as low as possible.
Well, I'm supportive of the idea of trying to lower property taxes. I'm trying to figure out a way to excuse me, trying to figure out a way to create a climate that's as much pro-growth and creates as much certainty and eliminates the risk and uncertainty in the business climate. And so our discussion here today, we have funding between the $900,000 that we've appropriated for these economic developments, as well as $300,000 a year for the county's share of funding the Greater Wichita Economic Development Coalition, has made a significant commitment on the part of the county in terms of our funds to try and strengthen our way of moving forward. Do you think that GWEDC should be restructured or replaced, because they're the ones who are bringing this proposal to us today, and their recommendation is on this on these two proposals, as well as some others that may come up with us in the near future?
Well, I would think that, yeah, we should look at, I think, downsizing or perhaps eliminating these types of bodies. I think, as Commissioner Ranzau cited evidence from Art Hall's report, that there's tremendous economic activity that goes on in the state of Kansas. The economic activity that comes through, like the city of Wichita or Sedgwick County, or even the state's economic development activities, is quite small compared to the overall dynamic flow of business creation and business death in Kansas. So really, and you know, a month ago when we talked about this issue at Sedgwick County, Alan Bell, the economic development director there, admitted that they didn't have the capacity to look at some aspect. I can't remember the details of it. So we don't have the capacity really as economic development officials to look at all the companies that are worthy of perhaps this type of subsidy and decide which are worthy and which are not. I think we really need to let the dynamic marketplace, business experimentation, Art Hall calls it, create an environment that fosters that, and we'll have winners and losers, unfortunately, but winners as well.
Well, let me bring that back. My last question to you will be, you know, with Caterpillar basically saying we're interested in looking at places where we might relocate to, what should we do about Caterpillar as an opportunity?
Well, I think that if I were the Kansas Department of Commerce or Sedgwick County or City of Wichita, I would say, look, we have an economic development plan that our governor endorses that says we're going to do less targeted investment, and we're going to try to create a better tax environment, a better regulatory environment too. As you know, the governor has started the Office of the Repealer. We feel this is the type of business where you can thrive. We can point to our good schools, we can point to our good roads and other aspects of our good government, and I think that puts us on a pretty good competitive foothold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, Commissioners, we, I think, have had a lot of conversation and opinion and perspective presented to us. I would say that I'm going to be supportive of this. We have a process in place that guides us through this process, through the whole process of economic incentives. I realize that, as Commissioner Skelton stated earlier, we have a whole variety and spectrum of issues that we need to manage at the same time. They're not all mutually exclusive. I don't mean to imply that, but we're trying to manage the whole basket full of our responsibilities. Economic development, I think, has been presented to us as a major issue from the community, and that we've found a program and a process to deal with that through our partners at the City of Wichita and with the Greater Wichita Economic Development Coalition, which is a coalition of not just governments, but also includes support by businesses in the community. So this is not something that's done in a vacuum or without private enterprise input. We know that this company is not a failing company. This is a company who's being very profitable, but who was being recruited away from us. And they, in this whole arena of competition for healthy firms and for employment, we know that we have to compete. And I think this is a request that's reasonable within our ability and is consistent with the agreements of our partners. So I'm going to be supportive.